Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of Tailoring in Conversation. In this series, I'll be talking to tailors from all around the globe to gain a better insight into their worlds. My guest for today is Alex Bello. Alex is a bespoke tailor and natural dye researcher who's previously worked at Miller's Oath, Paul Stewart and Tom Sweeney. Today, he's an awarded artist at Reframe researching natural dyes and fragrances. For those of you who don't know what Reframe is a collaborative research project where selected artists and designers team up with a community of scientists to rethink the manufacturing process of the fashion industry. The goal is to develop new concepts for the future of fashion by means of new processes and aesthetics that are inclusive and sustainable. Awarded artists will receive a grant of €55,000. If you're interested in things like that, you can visit the link in the description of this video and check out what Reframe has to offer, perhaps for you. Let's not waste time and chat to Alex and see what he has to say. Alex, thank you so much for making the time. I'm very glad to have you here today and look forward to our conversation. How are you, first of all?
Good. Thank you for having me, Reza. It's a pleasure. Everything good here in Spain at the moment. So it
Yeah.
could be worse, but no, yeah, working hard and doing well and healthy.
Great stuff. We have lots of things to cover, but before we get into that, I have a question that I ask everyone, and it's always a surprising answer. If me and you were 10 years old and we were playing today, what would we be doing?
If we were 10 years old,
Yeah.
let's see, what was I doing when I was 10 years old? I was living in New York at the time, and I was full on with soccer. That was the thing. Every day practice. Yeah, we'd probably be kicking the ball around in Central Park or in no Pier 40, which was kind of that downtown turf fields there. 10 years old, I think. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of when I was full on with soccer literally every day. Travel team, so we were traveling around on weekends to play tournaments, and then yeah, that was kind of
Did
the
you
life.
aim did you aim to become a professional?
I think everyone's dream on the team was to become a professional. You know, you'd have like I was goalkeeper, so I'd see all of the like Buffon or Ochoa. Those were like my reference goalkeepers. And of course, you dream of one day doing it, but I don't think I didn't have that tunnel vision. I have to become professional. I just kind of
Mm.
enjoyed doing it. I guess speaking in retrospect, at the time I was just a kid, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, no, it's something that was a big part of my life, and that I sometimes keep on doing now.
Okay, okay. So was there any activity that you were doing that led you to what you're doing today, or was it some sort of an accidental, you know, twist in the circumstances that you were having?
Yeah, no, it was soccer that led me to tailoring, funnily enough.
Right.
So yeah, let's see. It starts way back. I mean, when I was about 15, 14. Well, my mom is a pattern maker, so we had her studio in our place. At the time we were living in Spain, and the top floor, my mom was working on. Yeah, she had her studio there on kind of haute couture gowns with um, designers in New York and Madrid and stuff. And one day I'd kind of pop upstairs, and I was curious about what she was doing, and there were some students from the fashion school in Madrid that would come over every Saturday, and I was kind of like, well, that's kind of cool what they're doing. I'd like to maybe see if I could make something of my own as well, see what the basics of pattern making is. So then I kind of joined the students at the same time that I was practicing literally every day. That's when soccer became more intense. So I would start by altering my soccer jerseys, my training jerseys, because I was kind of one of those skinny guys. So everything was way too big on me. So I just take it in, and then little by little, the other players were noticing, and they're like, "Wait, how'd you get that sleeve to be a bit slimmer?" And that's when everyone was starting to like do push-ups and all that, going to the gym and everything. So the other goalkeepers were like, "Here, can you take my jersey and alter it for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, just give it to me and I'll figure it out."
Yeah.
So there were some like raglan sleeve jerseys, and I was like, "Oh shit, how am I gonna do this?" Um, but no, it was fun. I started learning the basics of pattern making with my mom, so
Mm.
she taught me really well the basics, the principles, what you should know, and then just started making kind of t-shirts and jeans and
Mm.
kind of casual garments for myself that I could wear, to school, and that I could really, yeah, kind of practice with. But then,
So how old were you at this time when you started to kind of do the alterations for your friends?
yeah, I was maybe like 15, 16 around there. Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, of course, that kind of grew a bit more and more. And then I went back to the States for soccer to play at the college level. And then I kept on doing that. Basically, we had even larger clothes in the U.S., so I had
Right.
more alterations to do. So those typical gray sweatpants.
Yeah.
Well, I just kind of started taking those in, and then the next week, before I knew it, I had 15 pairs of gray trousers on gray sweatpants on my in my dorm room that I had to just alter and take in for all my teammates. So yeah,
Okay.
that was fun. And then so the coach found out from the team, and he was like, "Oh, so you're into this, into tailoring?" I used to have one of our captains who played here like maybe 5-10 years ago. He has a shop in New York, like a bespoke tailoring shop. Like, you should check it out when you're there. Go say hi. So that's what I did. I went to New York one summer, and I was like, if you need any help this summer, I'm happy to help out however I can. And yeah, I was with a shop called Miller's Oath in New York, in Tribeca.
Hmm.
And yeah, his name is Kirk Miller, and he's helped me a ton. I mean, we became super good friends, and he really showed me this whole world of tailoring, which opened up a whole world for me, which I'm kind of deeper into now. But he's really helped me, you know, support me through the process and kind of show me the craft behind it.
Mm.
We had an in-store tailor there that, even though it's a bit yeah, a bit extreme. He did tie my finger down with a thimble, and
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah, the typical thing. And then it was just one day, and I was like, um, but yeah, I got to see the process of opening up. I did a lot of opening up garments and all that. But anyways, I
Mm.
completely thought it was my thing, this whole tailoring
Mm.
world. So it's
Right.
funny how through soccer I kind of ended up in that world, but I had some
Very interesting.
affinity for it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Alex, when would you say was the time that you thought I'm really going to go for this? Was it the time when you went into the workshop that your mom was running, or was it the moment where you went to New York and you were kind of like working with an actual tailor and you were a bit more experienced with
Mm.
small alterations? When did that real determination kick in for you?
Um, I think it was actually a bit later. So those summer experiences, I did at a few different tailor shops after that, and I did really enjoy it. But after a little while, it did get a bit not boring, but it was just like very traditional, and I wanted,
Hmm.
there's this creative part that I was looking for. So actually, after that, when I graduated from college, I went into women's wear, actually, and I did design and production and all that stuff, which wasn't really for me. So then I went back to tailoring, and then once I started getting the day to day, going into it more, I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely kind of the pace and the attention to detail and the craft that I'm looking for. And then it was maybe when I was maybe 20, around 20 or something, that I was like, okay, you know what? If I really want to do this, I want to learn how to make, the craft of it,
Hmm.
and to go deeper. I'd done basically everything around it, communications, photography, at this tailoring shop, but everything, of course, minus the actual making, which I was kind of, I guess, realized that I was craving, right? So then that's when I said, okay, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And and then I went to London to start this program at LCF, which came with a lot of surprises, but that really set my mentality to like, okay, I'm doing this.
Right. When you say surprises, what sort of surprises do you mean?
Okay, so you're there's this fantasy, right, in your mind that you're like, okay, I'm going to London, I'm going to be like this insane tailor. There's a perfect course that says bespoke tailoring and caps letters, and you're like, oh, this is amazing, like paper drafting and pattern drafting and all that, right? And then of course I arrived, and I was lucky enough to be introduced to through a common friend, one of the tailors, the head tailor at Tom Sweeney. I just wanted to figure out what his path was, how he got to where he was, and what his work was all about. And then I was telling him I was doing this course, and he was like, don't expect to become a tailor when you're out of it. It's there was a bit of not skepticism, but there was a bit of doubt. And then I was like, oh shit, well, I've come all this way just to do this course, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll have to, either give it the attention that I wanted, or at least give more time and effort to it outside of the course than the actual course itself. But in the end, I was really quite lucky to have a tutor, Laura, who was really amazing. She was a technical tutor who taught us how to basically make a jacket, a trouser, and everything. And that was a great set of fundamentals and basics to be able to then practice on my own, experiments with more things later. But I do have to say I was quite lucky.
Right. Okay. Well, one thing I've noticed is that you're quite an unusual student. So you have, for people looking at your Instagram page, that what they would see is that you have a lot of interest into art, and the things you look at and the things you take photos of is you're very visually orientated, but at the same time you can tell there is some sort of a curiosity behind it. Now, I've seen that curiosity also in your work with what you're doing currently, which I'd like to talk about a lot, because you're a tailor. You can cut patterns. You've got the entire background of doing all these alterations. So you've got the foundation there, but it seems that it's not enough for you, and you're trying to search for something beyond that. When we met about last year, you showed me like a lot of samples of natural dyes that you were working on, and it seemed pretty serious. And now it seems like even more serious, because now you're actually in Spain for like a year doing this on a very intense basis. So could you talk us a little bit through the journey of you and what you saw beyond the just basics of tailoring, and how you incorporated that into your work?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, when I was younger, when I was about first starting to see tailoring and all that, I was I really liked the craft and the world behind it. But yeah, again, I kind of drifted away from it because I found it after a while it being not, I wouldn't say boring, but just there was just something that was maybe missing. So then it was actually so the natural dye started before I started my course at LCF that summer, right before, after I had kind of left my job in New York, and then before starting. So I had this kind of this time of a bit of freedom to explore what I wanted, to get my mind rolling about the whole thing about this LCF program. Was like, how can you do tailoring in a contemporary way, or give it a fresh feel. So that summer I was kind of just thinking about a ton of different things, and I was the south of France, just visiting, and I stumbled across a dye garden, which is Michel Garcia's dye garden. He's one of the central figures in the natural dyeing world. And it was this amazing place and this castle, and you had this garden overlooking this amazing view. It was really super picturesque, and a huge dye garden, every plant had next to it a description of it, with all the different colors that it could extract. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. Like it's a secret hidden world that you don't see it. You can't see it. But there's, yeah, all this hidden potential that you can bring out. So I was like, I would really love to try to work with that and dive deeper into that world and implement it within tailoring. So as soon as I moved to London, I started in my kitchen, just like starting with turmeric, the basics, onion skins, avocado peels, and all that. And then that's when I started getting all these swatches for my dye book that I showed you. And yeah, little by little, I just kind of became more curious, more and more. And then there were these just little signs, that you get that kind of push you to keep on going, like you're kind of on the right path. Like even, the guy at the paper shop, and he was, I had some swatch laying around. He's like, "Oh, what's that?" I was like, "Oh, I'm dyeing with plants and all that stuff." He's like, "Oh, I used to do that when I was a kid, blah, blah, blah. Good stuff. Keep on going." So it's just like little things like that. I was like, okay, maybe I'm maybe onto something, no? Um,
Mm.
there was also a dye garden at the Mare Street LCF campus as well. So there was nobody had touched it for like a year or something. So they were like, look, all yours, use whatever you want, basically. It's like, okay, great, I will. And then, yeah, little by little, it kept on going. And then made a trip to Mexico, to Oaxaca, which is kind of one of the meccas of natural dyeing. So it was just like a solo trip out kind of in the middle of nowhere. But it was a family that had been dyeing for 3 generations, and they were also 3 generation hand weavers. So it was really amazing. And while I was there, I got some sort of like shock or something. I was like, all right, you've got to do this. So at the same time, I'm learning tailoring, right? I'm at LCF. I was also an intern for a good, yeah, 2 years at Tom Sweeney as well. So I was getting, a good amount of exposure, just opening my eyes and ears to the world of bespoke tailoring as well. So the whole idea and mission this whole time has been to mix those two worlds and try to explore the plant world, the tailoring world, and blend them together. So
Mm-hmm.
which kind of leads us to where I am now in Spain. I won a grant for basically a proposal, a project of this same idea of implementing the scents, the essential oils found within plants, and the natural dyes found within plants, and integrating them into a mini collection of bespoke tailored garments. So to my surprise, I got the grant, and they said, "Yeah, we want you to come to Spain for 9 months to work on it with our lab partners here." There's a hub where there's a bunch of technology and machinery that's very sustainable, that's cutting down on water use, which in natural dyeing is a pretty big topic. So yeah, I've been here since January, working on extracting new colors from plants from the area, because we're surrounded by mountains, and working with the technologies here to kind of modernize this sort of ancient process. So yeah,
Right, right.
it's been, yeah, we've been getting a ton of colors, and it's been a whole, yeah, we've been getting a ton of really great results, both for the scientists here and for myself as well.
Okay, I have lots of questions now,
Okay.
based on the story you did. So starting with a few simple ones. Um, Obviously, natural dyes is not something that you can just walk around every corner and there is someone willing to show you all the techniques. So it's really a discovery process, as I'm understanding from your story.
Yeah.
Now, as a student, and I'm not saying this specifically as a tailoring student or like an LCF student or what's, just a curious person willing to learn.
Hmm.
How do you approach something that is almost hidden. You know it's being done, you know people are doing it, but
Hmm.
it's not in your immediate environment. How do you approach this, knowing that you're on the right track, knowing that, oh yeah, these experiments that I'm doing in the kitchen or I'm in the bathtub, they're all worth it, and I'm actually, learning something. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Um, yeah, I mean, for me, I think I've always been a sort of curious person, right? So when there's something that I find kind of amazing, like when you're doing this dyeing process, and you find this color that completely unexpected from a green plant, you find this red is deep red is kind of hidden within it. You're like, wow, this is amazing. Like you want to check out all the different plants to see what else is in there. So yeah, as a person, I've always kind of kept on digging when I found something was interesting to me. And yeah, I mean the motivation to keep on going and to keep on um, staining bathtubs with indigo dyes, despite challenges with that, is yeah, I mean um, is something that I really enjoy doing, and also the failures with certain plants as well. For example, I mean, not all of them are going to give amazing colors. Some give really pale yellows, and you're like, oh shoot. But then also, what do you do with that? Because you can do a lot of different things. You can keep on. I've done a lot of research. There's a ton of um, you know academic paperwork and also even blogs from grandmothers of natural dyeing. So you can kind of pick and grasp a few different things here and there, and then play around with it on your own and see what works for you. Um, and for example, even if you do get a really pale yellow that you're disappointed with, well, you know what? Maybe you can change the pH of it, and then it can turn into a really bright orange, or
Mm-hmm.
dip a little bit of iron maybe, and it gives you a deep gray. So it's kind of also, yeah, bringing out the full potential, or kind of playing around with what you've got. I think that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what's important to me. I think is also using what you've got around you, instead of having to you know get something from all the way across the world. Is kind of seeing the potential of what you've got around you.
Yeah, I imagine what you're doing is also very precise in terms of registering what you're doing, because maybe the first few times, you're just throwing a little bit of this plant into hot water, and then you're just to see what happens. But then if you want to really fine tune the process, you have to work with scales, with how much am I using of this, how much.
Yeah.
Um, have you used the same process, as in really measuring what you're doing, also in tailoring and in the techniques that you're learning? For example, let's say you're practicing a pocket. Do you register what you do and all the steps, or do you see that it's no, that's a very different way of working for me, and this is very different? How would you describe that?
No, no, I would say it's very similar to 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 my experience in tailoring, and they've kind of both gone in parallel, which is kind of nice as well, because you kind of pick up on certain things that you could use in one and the other. But I think the more you do each one of them, the more you kind of find yourself fine tuning, yeah, like measurements and weights, and how much water, how much dye, but then also on the tailoring side, um, you know, millimeters, or the way that you do certain things. But I think it's more the understanding that you get
Mm-hmm.
from it. So with the tailoring, it's more understanding why you're doing certain stitches to create certain effects. So
Mm-hmm.
um, yes, you're pad stitching a lapel. Why are you pad stitching it? Why are you doing more stitches, more tighter stitches compared to bigger, longer stitches? Why are you, you know, um, gathering in at the bridle? Like it's just the understanding um,
Mm-hmm.
of processes like these, that, yeah, kind of have yeah that have made me understand more of what I'm doing and why I'm doing certain stitches. And the same thing with natural dyeing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the chemistry behind it as well. Why does this pale yellow turn into a gray? Why does, with a bit of acidity, why does it turn more orange and stuff? So it's also answering the why questions the further you get into it. And then I think that's what gives you more flexibility and more of an open mind in the future, as to how to create more new possibilities, and having this set of tools that you can, and understandings that then you can apply in different ways, with different plants or different cloths or different garments and things like that.
Yeah.
And, and I do have to say that while, the first year or two that I was doing natural dyeing and tailoring, I was kind of, going with the flow, just not too precise, but I kept my eye out for what I thought was correct. But then, yeah, little by little, you go fine tuning here, and in Spain with the labs here, everything is to the zero point zero 0.01 milliliter. And at the beginning, I was kind of, oh yeah, whatever, it's fine, plus or minus 0.05, and they're like, no, this is not how we work here. We've got to, get that very precise. We have to record this because we want this to be scalable. We want this to be reproducible. So if numbers are off, then something else will, snowball effect will happen. And sometimes the same thing can happen in tailoring. You do like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like, this little, I don't know, this little detail here, it doesn't matter. I can just leave it like that. But then you maybe realize in the future that it does snowball, and you're like, oh shoot, you know what? I maybe should have actually paid more attention to that. So
Right,
yeah,
right. So
parallel between both worlds.
okay, okay. So you kind of like, you do all of this experimentation on your own, and now you're in Spain. You're surrounded with laboratories and experts and people who are working on precise scales, and they're trying to really develop a technology for, is it correct to say, sustainable natural dyeing?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's um, that's one of the goals of the project, is to make natural dyeing more sustainable and also more approachable for on an industrial scale. So for small to mid to large size companies to be able to say, look, I want to replace the use of synthetic dyes which are polluting our waters, and we want to take a step forward and try to make at least maybe a collection or capsule collection of our garments, naturally dyed. So being able to offer a range of colors that comes straight from the plant. I mean, you've got a ton of pigments that are and extracts that are commercially available already, but it's about also expanding that vocabulary too. So that's kind of the goal.
So what I'm understanding is that uh, it's kind of like a bit of a contradiction, but um, natural dye by its nature is not a very sustainable thing, is it? Because it requires, like you say, tons of water, and then you really have to have an infrastructure for getting the ingredients, for harvesting them, for planting them, looking after them. The plants need a lot of water, so it's like a very, very labor intensive and costly process. Do
Yeah.
you think, so, being there and having worked there with the labs and the projects that you've been working on, do you think there is a possibility that's quite close into the future for natural dyes to become something like a normal everyday thing, and even replace synthetic dyes in some fields? Or do you think, no, we've got like years ahead of us to work?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, hopefully, it can replace, but it's true what you do say, that it's very labor intensive. It requires a lot of resources, a lot of water, a lot of energy. But we did do a comparison here of my traditional hand dyeing in a 50-liter pot for 2 meters of fabric, compared to the machines that they're using here, and the energy and water use are cut down by 70% using these new sustainable technologies. So it's also about being somewhat smart about it, and how you use natural dyes as well. Yes, there's the charm of having your pot and hand dyeing your fabrics, and there's a whole magic to it, because you've got I believe that there's a sort of uh, energy, that's transmitted from the person that's actually working with the fabric with their hands and dyeing it, extracting the plant and picking the plant themselves and everything. And I was very much into that mentality before arriving here. And then when I got here, I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine, and that's great for very special pieces, one-off pieces. But if you want to make an impact on a larger scale in an industry that's already in a situation that's not very environmentally friendly, well, then there has to be new approaches and new perspectives as to how we're going to use it. In the future, I mean, I think people are. It's also about the public. No, natural dyes. It's about consistency of the color that comes out as well. You don't get with synthetic dyes. You'll get the same color every time. With natural dyes, not as much. So it's also the public being open-minded to maybe a slight change in tone of a certain color, that it might not all be the same. But I think that nowadays we're kind of looking at, we're looking for things that are a bit different, that are not, that you're not going to see somebody wearing the exact same thing next to you on the street,
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully in the future we can replace synthetic dyes. And I know that factories are taking initiatives of having filters and cleaning the waters that they emit and everything, and that's all good too. But I guess there's also a slightly artistic approach to the natural dyes as well, where it's kind of a bit of a unique selling point too. It's something a bit different, because we don't really ask ourselves where does color come from. We've been so accustomed to being like, oh, this is a blue shirt. Sure, there are different tones of blues, but we never think, where is this blue made? How is this blue made? We're starting to think about that about our clothing. Where is this T-shirt made? But then I guess the next step is to think about where or how the color is made as well.
Mm-hmm. What benefits would you say that having the technology of natural dyes kind of like a bit matured? What possibilities and what kind of impacts will it have on other industries? I remember you mentioned once something about restaurants and the waste they have. Talk us a little bit through that, because it's not just like, oh, we get natural dyes and we can produce clothing with natural dyes, but it seems to affect other industries as well, almost like a waste management solution for multiple industries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's something that I've discovered here as well, is that when you're talking about natural dyes, it's not just about the color. It's also about the plants, how it's been grown, how they've been used before as well. So what I've been trying to do as much as possible is to use waste. Yes, for example, from restaurants. Like maybe 2 months ago, we went to go have lunch at a restaurant around here, and here a big thing are artichokes, artichoke dishes. And the thing about artichokes is that you've got a ton of these leaves, right? And you've just got that little bit of meat that you eat off at the bottom, and then you've got the heart, of course. But then as we were walking out, they were taking out the trash, and there was literally 2 full cases of just leaves of artichokes. And I was like, what are you guys going to do with that? And they're like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna throw it out. And I was like, can you just maybe leave it there for me? I'll take it back, and I'll take care of it. So then I brought it back home, and I extracted the dye from it, which ended up being like a beige. But then I kind of played around with the pH a bit, and with a little bit of iron, got this really nice deep gray. Had pre-mortated my fiber with some some soy milk and all that to intensify the color, and then ended up getting something that could be used for maybe like your sleeve lining or something. You maybe add some stripes or something. But yeah, the idea is also about being able to work with local producers as well. I was walking through the mountain, and people have to cut off their olive branches so that there isn't an infestation of a certain pest that eats off the olives, and they have to always keep on trimming their trees. If not, their olives are not gonna survive, and they need those olives to make their olive oil. So then I asked the man there as well, what are you going to do with those leaves that you just cut off? And he said, oh no, we burn them at the end of each month, because yeah, it's just not good for the trees. So I was like, can you pass me those branches you've got there, because I'm actually working with olive leaves for natural dyes, and it's this idea of maybe prolonging the life of something that we think is considered waste, and then just using it in a different way. I mean, yes, if you think about it, at the very end, it will end up being waste again, but at least you're prolonging the life cycle of what actually might not really be waste. So, anyways, yeah, that's I'm all trying to implement that into tailoring as well, because it all has something of, I don't know, this hand, something that has to do with the hand and plant and tailoring and all that. I think it kind of goes hand in hand in one way, at least in my mind. So I'm just trying to bring that all together, to make some garments that have a bit of a story behind them, that have helped you know re- yeah, reduce waste, or at least take advantage of uh, of maybe orange peels that were going to be thrown away, or leaves that were going to be burned, and things like that.
Do you think that tailoring companies, like the traditional tailoring companies, could have access to this technology in a way that, because obviously not every client wants to have something made from a natural dye fabric, and not every tailoring company wants to brand themselves as an all natural dye. So there's going to be limited maybe orders of people wanting to do that, or a one-off project. How do you think that tailors can have access to this technology without it being too expensive for them, or too time consuming? Well, I guess it comes down to the same thing. And also have access to the resources. Like if let's say a big tailoring company wants to have like 100 meters of some cotton dyed with orange peel or whatever.
Right.
How would they have to approach it? Because where do you get the 100 orange peels, and which orange peels? How do you go through the process? What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, that's a good question. I mean, from what I've experienced in the traditional bespoke tailoring process, there's usually, when a client comes in, you show them different swatches, right, of different fabrics, and then they can have a look through it, which is fine when you have fabrics that have been woven with that same color tone that can be matched, basically. With natural dyes, that's a bit trickier, because if you have a swatch of a dye that you did last year, or in winter, or in summer, when that specific plant is better, brings out more color in winter versus in summer, well, then you're gonna have a completely different color if that client picks it half a year later. So the short-term solution is that you have to, right, dye your fabrics first, cut lengths, and then offer those as as your 2 meters or 2.5 meters that you'll make that jacket of, and then that you don't have to have the worry of trying to reproduce it and getting the exact same tone, which with natural dyeing is almost not. I mean, it's possible, but it's very difficult to achieve. Um, in terms of dyeing 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 piece fabrics, it can be done for smaller amounts, 2 meters, 4 meters, and such. But when you're starting to talk about larger lengths, like 50 meters, 100 meters, I think for the future it would be smarter to collaborate with mills, and to dye the yarns instead of the final fabrics, because when you're dyeing yarns, the the weaving is done after, right? So then you get a much cleaner finish, and you have it really integrated into the fabric. When you're dyeing the final piece of fabric, what you're doing is actually, you first have to take out the oils and all the post treatments that have been done in the weaving process. So you're stripping it away from all of that. Then you're then mordanting it with, special like alum, for example, like a salt, so that the color actually binds to the fabric. And then after that you're dyeing, and then after you're left with a special fabric, but um, that's only for smaller lengths. For longer lengths, I feel like something cool could really be done with mills, and having certain lengths made in collaboration, I think could be really interesting, at least for the tailoring industry. If we want to go beyond just the cuts of 2 meters.
Do you think that well, you said something like about the public being open for, like, having inconsistent colorings, if they're buying something, or even not the public as in the customers, but also as the mills themselves, or even the people who are doing the dyeing. What sort of similar things do you think has to be in place, whether they're values or more tangible things like a specific infrastructure, for natural dyes to really become something popular, something as real as the traditional polluting, let's say, synthetic dyes?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it has to come from both the consumer and the tailor or brand, or whoever is making their products. I mean, I think there's a story to be told, because within natural dyes there's a lot to be told, whether it's the history of the plants, the history of the dye, the history of the color. I mean, there's already a lot there to talk about. But then there's also this, you have to make it relatable, right? Something that the public can be like, oh, you know what? I didn't know that. I think that's kind of cool. Or maybe, I don't know. There has to be some sort of link between natural dyes and the public and the brand. So this kind of triangle that binds them together. And um, I mean, I don't know exactly how that can be done, um, but I mean, nowadays um, with social and with photography and video and all that, there are a lot of tools that can be used to really give this image of natural dyes, which maybe, like, 10, 15 years ago was not as well adopted or well seen. It maybe had this hippie connotation, but there's definitely the potential for it to be something else today. I mean, it depends how you implement it, how you want to implement it. I mean, you can make bed sheets out of it, you can make bespoke suits out of it, you can make T-shirts out of it. So it's kind of really up to the brand, or the maker to be how you want to portray the image of natural dyes, which I think is quite exciting, because it's something that has yet to blossom. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, you're doing also other interesting things around scent recently in those laboratories. Um, what sort of projects are you tackling there? What sort of ideas are you guys playing around with?
Yeah, so the idea here at the lab is not only to extract the dye, the color from the plants, but also to extract the essential oils from them, and then integrate them into the into the fabrics we're dyeing with. So it's kind of making these mega garments, mega fabrics that have a lot of things embedded within them, but that are kind of subtle. And it's kind of based on the principles also of aromatherapy, and kind of has to do with the well-being of when someone wears a jacket. Maybe there's that subtle smell of lavender that can come out, or of thyme. And the idea is to integrate both the scent and the color of that same plant within a garment. So we're playing with this technology called microencapsulation, where basically um, these essential oils are encapsulated into a little capsule, basically, extremely tiny, but that basically you can apply with one of these machines that we have. I mean, you can even put it your washing machine if you want. But these microcapsules
Right.
are extremely expensive. But with this machine that we have here, it's basically it's a nebulization machine, and the way it works is
Mm.
that it has a little nozzle, and this nozzle goes spraying out both the dye and also these um, uh, these microcapsules, and it goes little by little so that all of what's being sprayed goes onto the fabric. None of it is being wasted. So we've been playing with different percentages of how much percentage of scent we want to integrate into the fabric. Maybe certain essential oils are stronger than others. Um, I haven't gone into the part of combining essential oils, but next week we're actually going to be doing some tests, combining a few of them. We've got orange, lavender, thyme, rosemary, um, and eucalyptus. So those are kind of the ones that we're playing around with now. And in the future, of course, you can make your own perfume and you can microencapsulate that, and then you can integrate that into your fabric as well. And the special thing about this technique is that it supposedly stays within the fabric. It's since these are such small particles, they're embedded within the fibers, and they
Mm.
stay for more than 20 washes. Is what it's
Right. That's a lot.
That's what it's claimed to do with certain resins that are applied,
Mm-hmm.
which protects these little particles from
Mm.
being too volatile. Basically,
Right.
I've
Right.
used kind of the most organic way, which is not using this resin because this resin also has some sort of chemicals in it as well. So it has maybe a lifespan of 10 washes, and that's what we're testing as well. We're seeing the durability of them, and basically the way it works is that with friction, once these
Mm.
microcapsules are embedded within the fabric, when there's friction, there's a bit of a little explosion of these microcapsules, and that's when they're released. So last week when we first did our first round with time, it was the first time that I really experienced it, and it's really quite amazing. It's a little explosion there, and then yeah, just the way that you can integrate natural scents into your garments, I think is something that's interesting, and that can you know it won't absolutely change your life, but maybe it'll improve maybe your well-being for a minute, or just to change, at least bring you back to certain memories that you had. And I think that's the power of scent as well, which I know you've been exploring as well, is the power that it has to bring us back to certain memories, to really have this subtle effect on our subconscious that we might not even realize, but that all of a sudden happens. So it's also playing with these subtle things that I think is really amazing. It's not in your face. It's something that um, you're like, oh, a little moment of a little aha moment.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have anything that you could advise people or students who are watching this and think like, yeah, I'm actually quite inspired by Alex's work and natural dyeing, and I'd like to try a few things out at home. Are there basic things that everyone has access to and they could do to start their journey into natural dyeing? And if that is the case, what would you recommend people who are interested?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my recommendation would first be use your garbage. Basically, use what you eat. If you're eating avocados, keep the pits, keep the skins. If you're eating onions, keep the skins. Put them in your freezer. Accumulate them a little bit over time, and then once you have enough, you can start experimenting with that. There's no need to, throw away something that you can maybe use in the future. I mean, and you literally just need a kitchen and a pot, and you don't really even need a scale if you don't want to. You just like throw it in there, and just to start, just to that feeling of seeing the color being extracted from from what you would have thrown away, I think is quite special. And then yes, you can there's different ways of preparing fabrics before dyeing it. I mean, the you you can pre-treat it with alum, which is a kind of salt, or if you don't really care about the light fastness, you can just put it in soy milk, a mixture of soy milk and water overnight. The next day it's ready. And then, yeah, I mean, it's really about experimentation. It's a personal thing as well. There's no like precise, exact book about how like things have to be done perfectly. There's very much an open mindedness to it. So it's something that's actually quite easy to do. I mean, with larger cuts of fabric, that gets a bit more complicated. You need a bigger pot, bigger spoon. But I managed last year in lockdown. I got myself a big 50 liter pot, and then just a few extracts as well. There's some commercially available extracts that you just kind of you can dissolve in water that come from plant base. And yeah, I mean it's a whole adventure. So like once you start getting into it, you can really play around and experiment too with tie dye, shibori, post treatments with rusty nails. I mean, again, it's what you can look at what you have around you, and for sure you have what you need for natural dyeing.
Very, very interesting. Now, just another question about the micro encapsulation that you mentioned. What is it? Is it a powder form or is it like liquid form? How does it work actually?
I don't have it here, but it's a liquid form. So basically, you start with the essential oil, which is a clear kind of very concentrated liquid from a plant, and then after that is then microencapsulated, and then it comes out in a very kind of like a sort of light, milky sort of texture, and you need a much more essential oil than you end up getting of microcapsules. But yeah, it ends up being this sort of liquid. You don't even see the microcapsules because they're so small. But then what you do with these microcapsules is that you have to blend them with a little bit of softener, which is what you do in the last stage of the dyeing process, at least here with the technology. And yeah, that's basically. I mean, there's specific labs that work just on microencapsulation. I know they do it here, but they're quite busy developing new sorts of capsules. So from different bases. There's there are centers in Barcelona and Slovenia and kind of a bit around the world, and it's a bit tricky to get in touch with them, but for them, they're happy to experiment with new plants as well, because for them it broadens their offering, and they're happy to do it. So I've had the chance to be introduced to some other labs as well that have helped me with that too. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, last part of our interview is this speed round, which I'd like to do. So I have a list of a few words, and I'll tell them to you, and then you tell me the first thing that pops up your mind.
All right.
All right. Okay. So starting with.
Do I answer with a word or just a sentence, whatever comes to mind?
It's if there is a word in your mind, that's the first thing. Go for it. If it's a sentence, go for it. Or even if you want to expand on it. But the shorter the better. The more compressed, the better.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. So synthetic dyes.
Danger.
Dangerous. Okay. Apprenticeships.
Knowledge, learning.
Knowledge, learning. Okay. Okay. Repetition.
Repetition is, I'd say, practice and getting, not necessarily getting better, actually. I'd say repetition is maybe a movement.
Movement. Savile Row.
Tailoring.
Tailoring. Okay. Okay. Alterations.
The beginning.
Beginning. Okay. Tailoring courses.
You make of them what you want them to be.
Curiosity.
Essential.
Essential. And sports.
Sorry, sports?
Sports.
I'd say fundamental.
Fundamental. Okay, okay. Very nice. Well, thank you very much, Alex. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I think most of our viewers are going to get a lot of value out of this, especially the ones interested in natural dyes and fragrances and perhaps new techniques and perspectives to bring back into tailoring.
Hopefully,
so yeah, I look forward to see what you come back with.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'm going to be spending the whole month of July putting these garments together that are naturally dyed and scented. So for September, it should be all ready to go. But yeah, thanks for having me, and it was a pleasure chatting with you.
Pleasure is all mine. Take care, Alex. Bye bye.
Right. Bye.
And that was Alex. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. If you'd like to see more from Alex, you can follow the links to his Instagram pages in the description of this video. If you have any thoughts or comments, please let us know, and we sure hope to see you again in the next episode. Until then, bye bye.